So thank you very much for the invitation to speak to this audience. We will split this talk into two parts. There will be more the general part from my side, and then there will be more specific information on the strategic research innovation agenda from our French partner leading the activity on that side, and Catherine Marquer. So in the next couple of minutes, you will hear about the Coordination Support Action BrainHealth and its numerous activities basically leading to the European Partnership for Brain Health. We were talking about that already in some of the panels. You heard always these side remarks. You've seen some of the actors sitting here already in the preparative work. And now I will try to give you some details, but I assure you, you have probably many questions. We will open up for questions at the end of our two talks, but I can assure you that we also still have many questions. So I ask for your patience. I can give you some details where we are at the moment, but it's just state of play for this time point, and we are still in the preparation, and there's a lot more work and details to come in the next month and year. So what is brain health? We have an EU presidency conference on that, so it seems everyone has a clear idea what it is. I can also assure you we had many, many discussions how exactly to define that, what is in the scope of this concept, what is not in the scope. And after many rounds of discussions, we basically settled on referring to WHO, telling them we will embrace this kind of definition of brain health as a state of brain functioning across cognitive, sensory, social, emotional, behavioral and motor domains, allowing a person to realize their full potential over the life course, irrespective of the presence or absence of disorders. What you can see there is spinning around of different concepts, disorders, conditions, disease. That was one of the discussions we had there. What is really important for us is that we as a coordination support actions are embracing that concept, but also mentioning the relevance of mental health. Tim was referring to that in our report and in the context of the future partnership. And also the fact that brain health is strongly interconnected with physical health. We had this brain-body interaction discussion yesterday, and the quality of the environment. Consequently, brain disorders encompassing mental and neurological disorders alike affect people at all stages of life and drastically decrease the quality of life of those concerned and their caregivers. So that's the concept we are using here. This is what we are facing here is the challenge, and we have talked about that already quite some time, so I will keep that really short. The burden of disease is enormous. It's painful because it's basically affecting every family as we sit here. And if we're talking about competitiveness, this is also problematic because not only the burden of disease for these people affected, but also the economic burden of this disease spectrum is enormous, and so is the pressure on the member states and associated countries to act on that. But despite what we have seen there, and Tim also talked about that, and we talked about it in other panels, there has been enormous investment, public and private one, and still we're not seeing the results we would like to see in that field. And the consequence is that we have to bundle our efforts. And that is basically the value proposition for collaboration, and especially for collaboration in the transnational area. So you have seen that slide. The overall message is we had many investments. They were all pretty specific on, be it in the nature, what we're being addressed, so more structural-like, more indication-related. And what we would like to look at is now to capitalize on these initiatives in the future years and to bring these different initiatives together and to build on that, use that as a building block and take the best out of every one of these initiatives and bring that together and broaden the scope. So we will grow far beyond the sum of these predecessors, and we will follow a holistic approach to brain health. And that is basically also the title of the conference, and that's where we're picking up. So since November 23, that was also mentioned by the Commission representatives, we are bringing together 21 partners from 11 countries to pave this way, to run through all the preparatory work we need to prepare a huge endeavor like this. And the main objective is to develop the scientific research and innovation agenda, and Katrine will talk about more how we did that in the last month and year. But also a really important challenge, and we had questions already on that in the different sessions today and yesterday, is how to bring all these actors together in an efficient way. So we're talking about governance. If we have a broad scope, as we would like to have there, we need to develop a governance structure fit for purpose and which is really effectively managing a partnership like this and a work program which is addressing the needs which has been spelled out already today and yesterday. We need to gather all the knowledge around these actors, to interact them, have an intensive dialogue with them, and start to build slowly this ecosystem we are talking about, an ecosystem of brain health and brain health research and innovation. So this slide we can very easily go through there because some of it has been mentioned already. The focus of the partners will be primarily national funding organizations, public or private, so the charities are also in there. We will look for an interaction possibility with other participants, that means researchers, healthcare providers, practitioners, patient organizations, the private sector, policymakers, regulators, and citizens. What we call implementation mode is here a co-funded one. That is a specialist expression for basically saying member states and associated countries are bringing part of the budget, and the European Commission is also bringing part of the budget to the table to work together. And what we're looking at, everything goes by plan. What we would like to do is to start with a partnership in the first quarter of 2026. And to give you an idea what we are talking about, the numbers we have indicated here, the expected EU contribution is probably around 100 or 150 million euros, and we are expecting the member states and associated countries to come also to the table with around 200 to 300 million euro. This is indicative budget, so I mean, you know how it goes. You asked everyone what is in your budget lines, but it's a question you asked in 2025, and we will probably have to reassure every year again and ask how much, in which topic the funding agencies and ministries are able and willing to dedicate budget. So there are elections in between and everything, but the interest is high, and we are pretty confident that we will come up with a budget size of in this scale. So if you would like to have some more details, we have already published on the Commission website the draft proposal, which is giving you an idea about the structure and the scope of the partnership based on the work we already developed in the last month. And that is the basis for the request to the member states and associated countries to dedicate and indicate their budget for the next 7 to 10 years. And that will be also the basis for us to develop a work plan which will be updated annually. This is a current version of the vision and mission statements. Obviously, as we didn't start yet, it will depend on the really final future partners of the partnership to confirm if they are happy with what we developed so far. But for now, the vision is to improve brain health for all, developing scientific knowledge, so putting scientific knowledge at the core of the partnership as a ground to promote brain health throughout lifetime, to prevent and to cure brain diseases, as well as to improve the well-being of people living with neurological and mental disorders. So you see again there we have the two scopes in Europe and beyond. And the way we are doing that, that will be the mission statement, putting brain health research and innovation by strengthening transnational collaboration and alignment. So that is the key here. And to promote the translation of results, we talked a lot about translational gaps in this conference, into tailored solution for prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and care, accessible for all. So we have the equity component here, and we talked about that also. If you break that down into objectives, which we will use for developing our work programs, there is 3 general objectives, and this is basing our work on this, promoting brain health and well-being throughout the entire life course, and strengthen the prevention and the evidence side of prevention. And that means on the individual side as well as the community side. And that's why Tim was also mentioning that we would like to provide more evidence for policymakers to act upon in their health policies. As a second objective, there will be promoting the generation and uptake of scientific breakthroughs. And that means improved and enhanced understanding of the brain functioning. So going back to the bench, basically, and generate more knowledge about the mechanisms underlying these disease spectrums, and come up with really accessible and tailored solutions in diagnosis, treatment, and care. And again, here, improve the quality of life. And then, we are also going to the competitive compartment here, establish the European partnership as a trusted, enabling collaboration structure, basically seeing it as a facilitation platform at the forefront of brain-related research and innovation together with international partners. So we are looking far beyond Europe, looking for trusted collaborations there for the willing partners. Okay. So to contribute to the aims and objectives of the future partnership and the priorities of a strategic research and innovation agenda, we will use a broad range of approaches. And this is including joint funding schemes. We have discussed that already in the other panel with JP&D and Neuron. So we will basically take the best of these two worlds together and develop a funding scheme, overcoming the traditional indication-related boundaries of neurology and neurodegeneration and mental health. And what we're also looking for is implementing standards of quality, be it in the research, data harmonization, patient involvement, fair data, all the aspects you've listened to in the conference. We will try to implement these kind of standards over the funding schemes. Basically, when you write your proposal, that you're being asked and evaluated against these standards. But beyond this, numerous other approaches will be used to further develop the European research area into a holistic brain health ecosystem and to strengthen the competitiveness of the EU. As you've seen, this is an overall objective, and it's becoming more and more pressing, and it will become more pressing in the future years because we will see more budget pressure on research budgets. So we will have to justify why to invest there and to demonstrate the impact of what we are doing. And that's why we are looking for collaboration, strategic alignment across disciplines and countries, and facilitating the use of EU infrastructures. We discussed e-brains as an infrastructure and why it's so important, and to see how we can improve brain health data and sample access, as well as sharing and harmonization as a basis for creating this kind of impact. And you will see a lot of activities around the translation and translational gap, and there is no easy answer. I know you would like to see us, so this is a catalog of activities, and that's promising the success, but there's no easy answer. But what we can assure you that we will take a pipeline approach and basically look step for step through the translational hurdles and try to come up with solutions so you as a research community can have basically a one-stop shop and come back to the partnership and see where you get which kind of support. It doesn't mean that the partnership will give you the solution, but it will facilitate the access and create a kind of knowledge hub for you so you can easily access, or more easily access, the information you need to translate your results into solutions. So thank you for listening. That was the first part. Now we're coming for the details of our French colleague, how we develop the scientific research and innovation agenda, and how it does look like.
Hi, I'm Catherine Marquer. I'm coming from the French National Funding Agency, ANR, and today I'm going to talk about the SRIA for the future EP Brain Health. And before I begin, I just want to thank the Hungarian organization because they did an amazing job putting together those multi-stakeholders, that's you. And it's been really at the heart of what we've been trying to do with this SRIA. So it was the perfect vessel to showcase a little bit what we think for the future. So I'm going to start like Ulrike around the definition of brain health, because of course we had to start from somewhere, right? So she already told you that we're embracing the WHO definition, And also that we want to highlight that we take into account the fact that it's a great burden to patients, families, caregivers, healthcare systems, and societies. And something that was really important for us was that patient organization would be part of the CSA. So they've been involved since the beginning through EFNA and GAMIAN. And something that's also very important, and I don't have to really explain that to most of you because you are scientists, is that we support science-based interventions. So when we're talking about brain health, we mean good health, and that means taking also into account the diversity of the population, right? Because we don't have all the same lifestyle, we don't all have the same needs, we don't all have the same genetics or environment, so we need to take that into account. But also all the way to bad health. So that means neurological diseases, either neurodegeneration or non-neurodegenerative diseases, psychiatry, sensory organ disorders. So basically, if you have a disease that you prefer, it's basically in that list. And something I want to point out that Ulrike said, but it's something that's really important, is that we're also taking into account the fact that, you know, around the lifespan, things can change and things can have impacts later in life. So it's something that's really on our mind too. So how did we go about to develop this TRIA? Basically, what we did is that we based our work on the previous strategic agendas for either Neuron, JPND, EBRA, Human Brain Project, so all of these initiatives that you heard about in the first panel. And we also looked and analyzed the plans for brain health in national communities. So you can see here the map. And I actually encourage you to have a look at the report that we published on the CSA website around the national priorities and around what has been done in the field already. So based on that, but also based on what is being done over the world, the Global Initiative for Brain Health, WHO, OECD, NIH, you know, like what people are doing globally, and also positioned papers in major journals, we got all of this together, and that was the basis for our work. And we got together with a diverse group of people that was coordinated by ENA, but also by INSERM. They're the French researchers. And we had contributions from all CSA partners, but I want to highlight the contribution of a few of them who are here. And also, we looked for additional expertise with the European Alliance for Social Sciences and Humanities. So the way it was done was an iterative process, and we also had consultations. So we had consultations, of course, with our scientific advisory board, with stakeholders, and that included a group of industry and industry-related stakeholders. We also had consultations with the Funders Forum, because of course we wanted to be sure that it would align with national priorities, and with the European Commission, obviously. So I'm going to dig a little bit into the priorities that came out of this work. So the first one is to promote brain health and to prevent brain disorders. So in there, what we include is to identify the determinants of brain health, also to prevent brain disorders with a lifespan perspective, as I told you, because it's something that, you know, we need to include in there, from development to aging. And also the effectiveness of what we can do and the citizens' empowerment, because they need to be part of the process. Understand the effect of physical and societal environment, and uncover mechanisms of compensation in the healthy brain. So that also include resilience. If it's something that's important to you, it's in there. Another priority, and here I need to, you know, stop for a second and make this point, that something that is essential for us is fundamental science, right? Because we cannot understand disorders if we do not understand how the brain functions on a day-to-day basis. So it's also something that is included here. And when we talk about understanding the causalities of brain diseases, it also means we need to understand how the brain functions, because we cannot have mechanisms if we don't know how the brain functions normally, I would say. So the basis of understanding the origin of symptoms and syndromes, the goal for this is to improve early recognition, to advance diagnosis, but also as a basis for better intervention and treatment for people living with brain disorders. So you have all of that in there. And we made a specific point around biological and digital markers, and also in improving disease stratification, because that's the path towards tailored intervention and precision medicine. And what we recognize here is that some fields are very advanced there, and some need much more work. And so what would be really interesting is to come together and benefit from the work that has been done for certain disorders, so we can really benefit from, you know, all the knowledge that is already in the field. A third priority, which is also very important, is to improve care and support for people living with brain conditions and their caregivers. And there's a lot of things in there, but one of the main things is to translate research results into clinical practice, because it's not enough that we have something that is excellent in a paper or at a bench. We actually need to see it in clinical practice. So here in the figure, you have some keywords that we put together. It is not exhaustive at all, but it's just a beginning of, you know, thinking about that. And you can see here like this multi-stakeholder approach that we think will be necessary to get there. We also want to highlight the understanding of the cost-benefit of early diagnosis and interventions in the healthcare system, the question of acceptability in brain disorders and their therapies, and also something that is super important is the dissemination of good practices to increase the participation of citizens in their health trajectories, because we still see that there is not enough quality information, and we were talking about that yesterday around how can we translate the results in different language, how can we approach the people in the best way. Finally, priority 4 is around integrating the social, ethical, and legal dimension to advance research and innovation for brain health. Because something we talked about a little bit already is that, you know, the brain, of course, defines who we are as individuals, but it also impacts how we interact with our environment and with other people. So very fast, you know, even if you're at your bench, you will see that what you're doing has a social, ethical, and legal dimension. So we need to take that into account. So we're suggesting to look at how we can contribute to policy and practice by involving different kind of stakeholders, how we can address questions of equity in brain health, and also develop appropriate metrics to weigh the consequences of brain disease for patients and relatives, and to evaluate the effectiveness of interventions, because like something that is very important also is how quality of life needs to be taken more into account, because sometimes as scientists, you know, we think about very biological outcomes, but that is not sufficient. So altogether with those 4 priorities, you have some cross-sectional things that are also, that came up in the discussion. So that's a lot of text, so I won't bore you with the details, but I can give you some keywords. So some things are related to innovation, because it's really something that we need to see more and more. And it started also in Neuron and JPND. You know, we talked this morning around the patents and how we had generated some innovation there, but this needs to be even further increased. And we want to really focus on the socioeconomic value in the brain space. Again, something that came up in discussion this morning is how we can optimize the use and sharing of existing resources and infrastructures rather than creating something new from scratch. Can we have a look at what we have, and can we do better with what we are already having in the brain space? Questions of reproducibility, this, I don't think I need to say anything more about that, because we all know that is an issue. Something also important, again, experiential knowledge and citizens' expectations for the design of research programs. So again, having them from the beginning and along the lifetime of projects. Promote the systemic integration of ethical consideration in brain health research. And then, you know, like this partnership, because of its lifetime of 7 to 10 years, is a great opportunity to have this new generation of professionals coming together and having this more holistic consideration of brain health. So it's something we should really take into account. And finally, something I already touched on is this idea of really paving the way for tailored intervention for brain health. So in a few words, so we did all this process, but then we decided to put it to the test. And we ran an open consultation that was actually run by EBC. And I have to say, I was a little nervous because we opened it for a little bit over a month in the middle of summer. But it turned out quite well. We actually got a lot of answers. So we had nearly 560 answers. And here I just give you a sense of who they are. But you can see they're a bit, all over the place in terms of age. So we have a very good representation. We also have about a 50-50 male-female ratio, which was really good. And you can see you have very different stakeholder groups that responded to this open consultation. Healthcare professionals, researchers, patients and caregivers, and also, diverse groups. Also to note that when people say research or healthcare professionals, they can be both, right? It can be an MD, PhD, for example. Here is the geographical distribution. So we can see we got answers from a lot of places all over the world, which is also good because we wanted to see how it resonated with the whole community. And these are the results really in a nutshell. We can go into more details if you want, but basically, overall, the community was very satisfied with the priorities we put forward. You can see that overall it's 84%. And there was also a space for comments. So we analyzed all the comments. So if you put some in there, they were read and analyzed. And something that came up multiple times and are highlighted at the bottom of the slide is the need for additional fundamental research. So it's definitely, again, something that we're thinking about. The need for animal model-based research, and also for brain-body research, which is also something we talked about yesterday, right? And those are all included in the SRIA because, of course, the brain is not an organ that is on itself. So the next steps are really the implementation plan, because this is a lot of ideas and a lot of disorders, and how we're going to put that into practice. And this is exactly what we're doing right now. And that is it for me. I'm just going to give you a link if you want to download the SRIA. This is it.
So now it's time for your questions. I'm sure you have quite many of them. So please raise your hand if you would like to ask something from the speakers. Thank you.
So I've been part of the planning process in the CSA, and I think what's been presented is really good and very ambitious, which also is good and needed. Where does the number of money come from? Because to me it sounds very limited to have this period of time and then, I don't know, allocate it over an expectation of maybe 500 million euros.
So the number comes, there is an easy equation. So what we're looking at is the investment, the public investment we have seen for the two research networks, that is JPND and Neuron. And then we have broadened the scope. That means that we are bringing in more funders and ministries which are either on the Ministry of Health side or the innovation side. And that is the numbers where we have the official request process. That means the European Commission is reaching out to the member states and asking them how much money they would like to invest. We are hoping for more, to be honest, but this is not on that list because we are also addressing charities, foundations, and the countries which are not associated. So there might be other budget flows coming in, but it's nothing that we can count on that time point. That's something we have to see during the runtime of the partnership, how much is really coming in. And again, it's an indicative budget, so there are elections in between, and we basically, every year we have to come up with an attractive program so the funders will invest in this kind of annual programs we are presenting. So it's something we have to develop step by step, and every year, again, fight for the budgets.
Thilo van Eimeren from Cologne for the European Cluster of Imaging Biomarkers. My question would be towards this nice building that you had with the roof and all the different goals that you have included there. I'm wondering if you want to have successful applications to be successful in each one of those categories, so kind of a one-size-fits-all application. Or can you make sure that excellence is key maybe in one or two areas? So how can you balance basically from ticking all the boxes or being excellent in particular aspects?
So what you've seen there as a building might be a misunderstanding because it's not all for calls. There is, in this building, there was a block for joint actions and funding, and that means competitive calls for proposals. And then there will be additional activities. And that's why what I was talking about, the pipeline approach, basically to overcome the transnational hurdles, it's not always going for competitive calls. It might be to provide better access to infrastructures, to provide the knowledge about industry standards, to do capacity building. So this will be not by the call scheme, but by additional activities of the partnership. And that's where the Commission comes in, because this is the part of the funding we will use for these kind of activities. Yeah.
So, more recent European Union calls have been quite ambiguous is too strong a word. There's a lot of interpretability. But if you want adequate coverage here across the translational spectrum or across diseases, will you still make it relatively open calls, or is it going to be more prescriptive? Do you have any plans whether it's likely to be similar to more recent EU calls? Or?
So this is about feasibility, and it depends on the interest and the appetite of the funders. That's what I tried to say before. We are generating now an overall interest to fund this kind of activities, and we have seen this scientific research and innovation agenda, and that is, it's like a buffet. You're offering that to the different funders, and what we're looking for is then each year to create a critical mass on some of these topics. And we will run different call and funding schemes, one classical biomedical, transdisciplinary and transnational ones, but also the one Katrin mentioned around ethical and legal, so the LSAR part, and there might be other call formats, more high risk, high reward, more innovation orientated. So there will be different call formats, but highly likely not covering in one call the entire pipeline, because this is overwhelming. The way we have to do the evaluation, the way we address the budget, it's easier to have different call schemes for a part of the pipeline, because it will be different funders.
So those of us who are interested in particular disease states or areas of research and are looking to create partnerships with external bodies, and we've talked about the NIH, maybe Australia and so on, would you suggest that it would be better for us to look at disease focuses or an area of science, or any of the above, providing it's something that works? Or do you have a feeling how it should be?
Yeah, I wanted to, also answer the first part of the question with something that, we can offer maybe topics that are very broad in terms of science or in terms of going across disorders. The question is also, and it's directed to you, for the scientific communities, are you also ready to work together? Because, you know, we can try to suggest a holistic view of the brain, but we'll have to work together on that. So if we want to go further and to do things that have not been done yet scientifically, right? So it's not only we can offer things, but, you know, it's a back and forth process, right? Does that make sense?
While you're thinking about the follow-up question, we have seen a lot of funding schemes which were really very focused on a certain disease or indication or a spectrum of diseases, and that's exactly what we are not looking for. Because we have seen that what we're looking for is now funding schemes which are across the traditional borders of indications, and that might be looking for factors, risk factors for brain health, for promoting brain health. So it's basically, and these might apply to different disease spectrums, and that's what we are looking for, so the common denominators. But let's see how it goes. You've seen the Scientific Research and Innovation Agenda. It's very, very broad, and we probably, at some time point, we will also come up with some indication-related ones, but we try to go beyond that, because that's something we have seen nationally, and we have seen that in EU funding schemes before. Mm-hmm.
So what would be really useful from my point of view is to find ways of accessing structures within the European collaboration which are not traditionally available to some diseases. So for example, JPND, looking at, say, traumatic brain injury or pollution, or so bringing things into the fold where there's already a structure of collaboration, but it's a very traditional structure, but pulling things into it which would otherwise not be there, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're also looking for. Yeah.
Thanks for the 3 presentations, really great. Obviously, I hope you don't mind me asking this question in public, but Tim, it's rather for you, because we had a great overarching framework and vision on behalf of the Commission, a value proposition from Ulrike and Catherine. But on the SRIA more specifically, I think we have really come up with a thorough vision of all the needs from the community, from patients to researchers. But we all recognize here that the amount of funding is not enough and not commensurate to the challenge and to the burden we are trying to address. It's a no-brainer. So what is the potential for you, for us, to go and seek in other funding instruments, and the extent to which the SRIA can be a source of inspiration to really stream other funding instruments that exist within Horizon? And I would even push it a little bit further, because we've been discussing that in the context of DG Santé's program and the emergence of a coordination strategy. You mentioned the Healthier Together, that is supported by another funding program, the EU for Health, and there could be really others. So within the Commission, what is the extent to which we can streamline resources towards the needs and priorities identified within the SRIA? And I would push it a little bit further. What about the FP10 and the further funding programs, and how can we actually advance the awareness and the need in that context? I know it's probably more a crystal ball answer that you may provide there, but it's really to try and push for something that is longer term. And obviously, if we think 7 or 10 years, that means that there is a lot happening by then, but there is probably a lot of developments that we can try and push for. Thanks.
That was a big question there. Yeah, different areas covered there. So yeah, you know, there's never enough funding to begin with. I think we should try to use, well, obviously the partnership should boost at least funding, and there are obviously a number of other instruments too that fall underneath Horizon Europe and other EU programs, you know, in different thematic areas. Whether it's on public health, with the EU for Health program, whether it's more, you know, AI or digital, the Connect program. Under Horizon Europe, you know, if there's, you know, if things are, I mean, obviously the partnership will have also initiatives in the area of accelerating innovation, but also we'll have a look at the European Innovation Council. But also, yeah, it's also something we touched upon earlier. In fact, I mean, bilaterally, we should also look at, yeah, you know, on other instruments like the European Investment Bank, which have this, yeah, this particular interest in the concept, these emerging concepts of like brain capital, brain economy, and whether you know, it could be a very interesting area to mobilize funds further. Yeah, in optimizing brain health, let's say. On FP10, yeah, it's still. I mean, there are many discussions that are ongoing, and it's still rather early just to take a good position on this, to be honest. So, I mean, there are reports coming out now. Task force is still working on them. Yeah. So how? Yeah, I can't really. I think it's too early for me to take to come with specific answers on that, actually. But I mean, very soon, let's say there will be more strategic vision on how FP10 will look like in the future. Yeah.
Hi. Just to Tom McWilliams from the Fens Calvi Network of Excellence. So, first off, to the coordinators, congratulations. I think this is a wonderful demonstration of successful advocacy in getting the Commission to really prioritize brain health, and everybody really wants sustained investment in this. But my question maybe is sort of aligned with Fred's earlier. How can we ensure, given the 99% or 99.7% failure rate for neuroscience therapeutics in terms of at least degenerative disease, how can we safeguard credibility if we don't deliver on these objectives? And is there room for parallel CSAs in different aspects of neurobiology? I'd welcome your thoughts on this. All of you.
We'll start with the CSAs.
Well, CSAs could be, yeah, I mean, it's a tool for coordination and support. It's like, so the question relates to how to improve the success rate.
So it's very, very broad, your ambitions. You're trying to balance ambition with the necessity for impact. And so, you know, there is a considerable chance that, you know, getting a theranostic impact, you know, it's going to be a big ask to deliver with this budget. So is there room for other initiatives that could accelerate progress in neuroscience in parallel to this?
Well, okay, let me just say what the partnership should really aim for is just to build this solid ecosystem out where you can, as efficiently as possible, transform research results into, you know, an innovative, valuable product or service. I think that would be then a good ground to feed into further studies. And the partnership, I think, will have particularly aim at early clinical studies. But I mean, together with all technological developments, whether it be AI and, you know, discovering new leads or yeah, it's going to be an interplay of many factors again, I think, to improve this efficiency and to be more impactful. But yeah, at least as a basic stage, yeah, I think that we should, you know, really work on having the researchers thriving in their community and focusing more on the research and less on other burdens that are out there, and then so provide them with nice structures so that they don't need to look forever for the next stage in the value chain. So from an idea to let's say a product or a service on the market. So if we can make this as efficient as possible, you should have more impactful results at the end. And Ulrike, I don't know whether you want to add something.
I will try to. I said that today already. There is no easy answer. That is the question. No? And there will be multiple answers. And the way we're doing that, it's not only about funding. It's about building capacities, implementing standards, improving quality of data and harmonization exchange. So all the building blocks you've seen in that nice house is not only about funding, because funding wouldn't be enough for that. I completely agree with that. But there will be, it's kind of like using seed money for venture capital. It is, basically what we're trying to seed there is to build the capacities, so to enable better research results. And in some aspects, it means going back to the bench. That's already what we said. Both of us said that. To improve that rate, that's one of the hopes. But the other one is to improve the quality of the data we're seeing out there, and that on every step of that value chain. That will be one of the approaches we're seeing there. And the other one we're looking for is creating such an attractive program that there might be other funding streams. Tim mentioned some. There might be aligned funding with the private sector, and that is a lot more than looking for the big pharmaceutical companies. It might be services. It might be in the AI neurotechnology field. It might be the SMEs. It might be the startups. So it's a very broad field. And we will basically seed some of it and see what's coming back and see how the appetite is for these kind of measures.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree with what you just said. And I just wanted to give you a sense of what we're trying to achieve. And agreed, it's not a ton of money. But the idea is if you're an academic, right, and you get funded by the partnership for your project, the idea is to accompany you, right? So we're going to offer you the services that we can to make you as successful as possible. And that also means, for example, if you want to go towards innovation, we're going to accompany you along the way. And the things we would like to implement is, for example, training, because something we see very often is that as a neuroscientist, and I'm talking basic scientist, you don't necessarily know what is necessary to go to the preclinical stage, right? So you're going to do everything, and at your bench it's going to look great. You're going to publish a Nature paper, but it's not what you need to go to the preclinical stage. So what we can do is put you in contact with the people that are going to give you the leverage necessary and the knowledge necessary to get there, and also put you in contact. It can be also, talking to your national politicians about your needs, or it can be around European infrastructure like, ECRIN or eBrains, or, depending on your needs. So this is where we come in, right, and we facilitate things for you.
Thank you. I would like to bring another aspect to the discussion, which is the funding agencies aspect. And whenever we hear that there is a new partnership, we are, on one hand, yay, a new partnership on interesting topics. And on the other hand, we are like, oh my God, a new partnership, something we have to manage and administer. So in that sense, we are very happy how this new BrainHealth partnership is built organically on the basis of the ERANET funding schemes. And this is rather a comment on my side, not a question, but we were really satisfied with how JPND and Neuron was managed and coordinated. And if it's possible, we would like to have this same care and same efficiency from the new BrainHealth partnership, and we are very happy that you are coordinating this new partnership, because it's kind of a guarantee for us. Please see our side as well, because we are part of close to 30 co-fund schemes, and all 30 co-fund schemes each has separate IT systems, separate mailing lists, separate times for the funders meetings and for CSCs and governing board and NPC and NGB, so all these. And we are always very happy as a funding agency if we see that something is handled very effectively, is coordinated in a very efficient way. So that was a comment on our side. And a very brief question is that we have touched upon the issue of the widening participation, of the participation in EU collaborations of those countries that are not, that do not belong to the advanced innovator group, the so-called EU13. And these partnerships can provide great possibility for catalyzing the talent that is in these countries. And I'm just asking whether you had any ideas how to, I don't know, provide additional initiatives or make sure that the talent is equally mobilized from all parts of Europe in this very important research domain. Thank you.
So thanks a lot for the vote of confidence, and it goes also to Philippe Amouyel. Regarding the EU13 concerns and questions, that is why it's so important to have the support of the European Commission, because that is enabling us to use the widening schemes you have seen with JPND and Neuron, which are rather successful in our view. And that's why I already also hinted out in that building presented, there is a lot of capacity building in there, and there we see a big chance of really having a new generation of researchers which are directly brought in contact with these kind of standards and harmonization requirements and involvement requirements, patient involvement. So to having these kind of standards to transport that into the research communities, also for the EU 13 countries as well as the small EU countries, and to enable them to comply with these kind of standards from the very beginning. So there we see a big chance of involvement, and we will try to keep the administrative burden as low as possible.
Thank you, Philippe Amouyel. This is a question that complements what Frédéric Dostrobeck said a few minutes ago, because when we see the estimation of budget, maybe we can wish it will be higher, but it's 300 plus 150 or 100 to simplify. That's mean 40 million per year if we go on a 10-year period, on a 10-year term. This is almost what was collected by GPND and Neuron. Not much more. In this, you have to extract the management part of the partnership. And what I better understood when Tim presented about the ecosystem. So this will consume also money. So the point is that the call that could be issued, including, of course, the population of Neuron, of scientists of neurons, population of GPND and others from mental health and other domain. Don't you think that the level of money finally will be reduced at least for these two? But Frédéric mentioned that there is other DG and other calls who are ongoing that can also benefit of this ecosystem. So I think I don't understand, because we want to put almost everybody on the same umbrella. I think it's a good opportunity, but there is still other things outside of the umbrella. Will it be possible already to connect with the other DG, with EU4Health and other partnership already, just to have a more global view of this ecosystem you want to build up, not an ecosystem which is localized just under the umbrella. Do you understand what I mean? No?
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, we have the different programs. The partnership falls under one program. And certainly, there cannot be any overlapping activities, at least, something that we should avoid, so no duplication. But that doesn't rule out, for example, that there are activities that are better done, not that it's done better, but that can be done via maybe another program or via the Horizon Europe program. Let's say, like you may know, the Commission has been pushing for the partnership to have some activities in clinical research. Of course, these are discussions that are also still ongoing, but we also acknowledge that you cannot do phase 3 or you cannot do the late phase clinical studies because they're just too costly and and as was discussed before, also some areas are maybe not ready for this and so forth. But I mean, one way to see it, and what I'm trying to explain, is that possibly, I mean, it's one option out there, just like there are many other options. Possibly, the more, let's say, intense or costly clinical trials, or for example, or clinical studies, let's call them, could be funded outside of the partnership. Could be funded via the health cluster under Horizon Europe. It's just one option. I'm not saying that that's going to be what will happen, but just as that is one option, there may be other areas that are more suited to be funded via one program or the other. It doesn't mean that they have to work in isolation. They will certainly be asked to liaise with the partnership so that everybody is aware of what's going on. And also as a way of certainly trying to avoid any duplication of efforts. So, I mean, let's say maybe there are aspects on artificial intelligence. I know this is I know the partnership is also really interested in this area, but maybe there's some aspects that are better treated underneath the Digital Europe program. From the Commission,
Yeah, I clearly understand that, but I think this is a unique opportunity to have this brain partnership and to develop this ecosystem by building up already in the partnership interfaces with other EU4Ls and others. By experience, trying to build these interfaces in GPND was very difficult. Try to have interfaces with IMI, if you remember, very complicated, with other Ministry of Finance to help SMEs and things like that. I think it would be much more powerful because when the European Commission says it could be interesting to do this, countries follow that better and put money on. So just to have this interface already prepared in the partnerships and anticipate that discussions with EU4Health, with DG Connect and others. If we take the example of artificial intelligence that will invade totally the brain health partnership, I think we have to anticipate that just to be ready when the time will come to have a call, to have something like that, or an interface or working group, just to be ready to fund it. I don't. Yeah. You see, it's not necessarily, but it's to anticipate the extensions to other. Because it's transverse, it's translational, so it should extend towards other initiatives that European Commissions has created already.
Yeah, I think just maybe it's like a side thing is, EBC is leading this thematic network also on brain health, a coordination plan for brain research in Europe, and they're trying to cover all the different policy areas, so public health, research, and other areas. And obviously, this network will also interface with the partnership, and maybe a means also, as you mentioned, interfacing with, it's sort of like a basis to which then for something could be built on further, where you have the different programs or different DGs together. It could be a basis for something like that.
But there is also a limit of good size, to be honest, because this is already a big tanker.
Just one point about good science. You mentioned that to do better science, but I think what have been done in GPND and Neuron was already good science. So it's just to move on good science.
I'm not talking about science. There is a limit in a good size of governance and agility. So the bigger the network, the slower it gets to adopt new developments and to react on what's happening out there. So I was not talking about the science, but the size of a network. And this is already a huge step forward, because if you remember the slides Tim was showing and I was showing them, and I don't know, you didn't show them, this was a fragmentation we have seen in this area. And we have seen the same fragmentations in the areas of the other partnerships Dr. Schenk mentioned. So what we're seeing here is that almost around 40, probably likely 40 networks are now joined in 8 to 10 partnerships. And this is a huge opportunity because it enables the infrastructures and the research communities to have a one-stop shop for their kind of concerns. And this enables us also as funders to work together and not distribute our capacities over 40 networks. And that means for the research community, when they are writing a proposal, that they do not have to adapt to 5 different formats of how to write a proposal, for the evaluators to adapt to 5 different procedures, and so on and so on. So we have an opportunity also to harmonize our way of working together and to interact with the ecosystem. So this is a big opportunity. And what Dr. Schenk already said, I don't know how many partnerships it was, 30? 30 you were involved. We are seeing the same thing with many funders, and now we have the opportunity to work together. And there is an overlap between the different scopes of the partnerships. So there are rare diseases in the brain health area. There are personalized approaches in the brain health area, and it's always the same funders. So what we can do is directly tailor our calls and to make the best out of the budgets available for personalized medicine, for rare diseases, for pandemic preparedness, for One Health, and so on. So basically what we're doing here is we will try to maximize the use of the budget we have there and to maximize the impact and to enable the actors to understand who to talk to.
I'm from Hungary, and it was mentioned, I really appreciate the widening scheme because we are in both GPND and neuron projects. And what we are facing is actually in translation something which is not so much mentioned. To some extent, the quadruple helix calls of the Commission are tackling that we are really missing the link between the regulators and the key stakeholders. And I'm involved in a IPSAI project, which is great, for clinical translation, and we are facing the new problems now. Basically, the fragmentation in Europe in regulations. Of course, we have email, but the national agencies, they are struggling with the hospital exemption and other elements, but also in the legal support, what's patented, what's not patented. It varies country by country how the patents are really interpreted, especially for research or early clinical stages. And also the reimbursement, which was, I'm not sure if it was mentioned on this conference, but one of the big problems in Europe that we have a fragmented national-based reimbursement scheme, which frightens away a lot of ATMP developers because only the US or Chinese market covers it. So I wonder if in your program, do you plan to tackle these issues? Because these are the ultimate blocking elements, in my opinion, for the true translation, especially in rare diseases. It's not necessarily so expensive because the schemes are evolving for ultra-rare diseases. So clinical translation could be done, but there are still many elements which are kind of blocking that smooth transition.
So we completely agree. First, it's a research and innovation network, so there is a divide in responsibilities, as you know probably better than me. What we can do is generate the evidence for the decision makers. So, for example, in regulatory science and research, there might be some opportunities to, and that's what I mentioned before when I talked about providing the evidence for the policymakers. So they are having an evidence-based approach for the health policy. So that's something we can do. There are some ministries of health part of the network, so that might also help to translate better this kind of effort. And what we will do also is, what I said before, now we are talking about the size, that's the elephant in the room. So if we try to build a consensus among the research communities and maybe even also the private sector, what is the regulatory requirement or what is missing there, we might be able to come up with some suggestions for clinical endpoints, diagnostic approaches to start the clinical study and so on, and facilitate that dialogue with the authorities you were mentioning. Obviously, they are in the capacity of the national authorities, so this is just a dialogue, but there might be also an opportunity on the European level, and I understood there are also discussions.
Yeah, well, I mean, discussions to simply, to facilitate the interactions with the regulators, so that once again the researchers can focus on their research and don't need to lose time or focus on other things like seeing who to interact with. So the idea is to make it as efficient as possible by developing, let's say, entities or structures that will facilitate getting advice on regulatory aspects.
Domokos Gerő from the Center for Molecular Fingerprinting, Hungary. You mentioned the aims about early diagnosis, and this one is a tricky question, because how can we move backwards in this field without having any kind of effective treatment? And we do believe that if we are moving back, let's say a decade earlier, then we might have something that would work. But for that one, we need quite a lot of time. I'm just asking it because we are collecting samples in the Health for Hungary project for more than 10 years, for over 10,000 people. And the issue is with all of these programs that if you collect the samples, starting up from healthy individuals, as you said earlier, good health, as a starting point, then you end up at the end with only a few subjects with the diseases. And with dementia, we quite often will have very few subjects if you start up with very healthy individuals in the beginning. So what is the vision for the upcoming years? What results do we expect in this respect?
That's a very easy question. Thank you. No, I mean, it's a problem we always have. You know, whatever the disorder, the point that is limiting is always the so-called controls, right? So something that can help is when you are working transnationally, is actually that you have access to more controls, per se, like if you put your data in common. And that's, you know, something that is always a problem is also how we harmonize data between countries. And it comes back to regulation and the necessity, the national necessities and everything. So something that is, you know, an advantage in this kind of ventures is that you can have those discussions and try to have those discussions in advance. And of course, you will miss some points, but, you know, maybe you'll have the majority of what you need to collect in terms of information of your patients, and at least enough that you can share that data with your colleagues here, there, and, you know, everywhere, if possible, so that, you know, even if you have a limited number of controls in your cohort, you know, altogether, it will be a sufficient number to do something statistically at the end of the day, right? So I don't have a specific answer for your disorder because I don't know what your need is exactly. But those are the things where, you know, we can try to have that mass of data that is well annotated and that is quality data to answer some question at the end of the day. But of course, it's going to it takes time. Is that related to that?
So the issue is that with a clinical disease, you do need the diagnosis because it's a decision making. You decide on the treatment or the steps. But if we do not have any effective treatments and we envision the precursor stages of dementia, how will we ever end up?
So that's more of
this one if there is no decision making based on that one?
Yeah, that's more of an ethical question, right? Is what do you disclose to people even if you know that they may get the disorder later if there's no treatment? Or, you know, so, well, I guess that's when, for example, when we have those calls around ethical questions, that is a good topic for something like that, because of course it will depend on, you know, what care is available, but there are some diseases for which there are cures in the brain health space, or at least some level of treatment that is efficient. If you have nothing, then yes, it's a more, you know, delicate questions. But it's something that would be actually very interesting to discuss between experts of different countries, because there might be different points of views, and it would be very interesting actually to have an harmonized decision of those kind of things, so that collectively we decide on what is needed to make a statement to the patient, and also, you know, on both sides, in terms of the biomarkers and in terms of the clinical indications that you have, and also in terms of the treatment. Because, you know, from one country to the other, you have very, very different points of views on that.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. My take on the question that was asked was, if you start collecting clinical cohorts now, it's going to take a long time. But surely we will have clinical cohorts. I'm most familiar with the UK, and we have Biobank. The REACT cohort, which was started during the pandemic, has 2 million people. Biobank has 500,000 people. The key issue is, if there's a disease of interest, even at a prodromal stage, we have agreed common data elements so that whatever's collected in Hungary for early stage dementia or PD or whatever it is the same thing that's collected in Austria and in the UK. And there needs to be a commonality about case ascertainment and how we follow these patients forward, what endpoints we have. I think if we start collecting data now, then we are doomed to failure. 10 years is not enough. We have to start with cohorts that we already are following up.
That would be also my take, to be honest. I mean, we talked about limited budgets before, so there very likely will not be the budget for creating new cohorts, but when we talk about seeding money, this will be part of it, to connecting the cohorts transnationally. So that will be one of the benefits and added values of the partnership. But I know that you're hoping for more, but let's look back. The funding schemes we have seen so far were somewhere between 2 to 4 years, and now it's the first time that we're looking for a funding scheme of 7 to 10 years. This is really, really unusual. We're talking about 3 election periods in the majority of the courses. So this is the first time member states are putting money down on the table for such a long period, and this is helpful. I know that you would love to have funding streams for 20, 30 years, but this is not going to happen. And it's the first time that we are bringing together these different initiatives with a scope which has never been seen before and which is globally unique. You will not find something alike all over the world. So I know you're hoping for more, but we would be happy to get that one flying. And that will be, I mean, we don't know what will come thereafter, but this is the second wave of partnerships, and we have to demonstrate that this one is working and to keep on the member states to invest on these kind of initiatives, because there will be a life thereafter. And we have to demonstrate impact very rapidly, because they are already starting to discuss the next wave, and then we have to demonstrate that this funding scheme is a successful one.
So basically the answer is use the data that is already available and keep on collecting for the future funding scheme.
Thank you very much. Actually, this is what we kind of expected from this last session, that it will have the most questions throughout the conference. For now, I would like to thank you very much for our speakers, and we will provide you the opportunity to continue your discussion after the closing session of the conference. So for now, thank you very much.